Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 23rd of March. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry from Rangers Review HQ once again. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good. Enjoying it, Derek. Enjoying it now. All fine. Nice day again. So looking forward to another chat.
Yeah, jolly good. And Johnny McFarlane also joins us. How are we getting on this Wednesday morning, Johnny?
Good, mate. Very good. So as Joshua says, up here in sunny Cambuslang, the weather is nice, and I can see out on my window across the whole city. So it's a good start to the day.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Before we look at all the Rangers news, folks, if you're watching this on YouTube, and thousands of you are now doing so, thank you very much for that. If you hit that subscribe button, it means that you'll never miss a video when we go live. And also, if you've not taken advantage of the site as well, I've just popped the description in the comments section there. Just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. Just £2.99 per month. It really is cracking value, and you can support top quality journalism covering the club you love. Okay, we'll kick off with events yesterday, Johnny. Life's never dull when you're covering Rangers, and it seems to be there's a bit of infighting going on with regards to the current board and Club 1872. The supporters group, of course, released a statement yesterday. Rangers then released a counter statement, and it appears to be some sort of civil war brewing that really Rangers on the field don't need at this point in the season or any time, you could say.
Yeah, I spoke to a number of Rangers fans yesterday, and I think I can say with confidence that the general appetite was just not there for this kind of thing. I don't think anyone really wants to pick a side between Club 1872, which is made up of supporters, and obviously Dave King has a strong influence and agreement with regarding the shares, and the Rangers board, who are made up of Rangers supporters themselves as well. I just think people want to get on with the football. That's what we do best on this website, certainly where our focus is. And it's just a difficult one, I think, a difficult one for everyone. Yesterday, watching these events unfold and the individual statements, it's clearly quite a testy situation between the two sets of Rangers supporters, ultimately. And you have to say that you would hope that they would get around the table and sort it out, in such a way that it doesn't distract from. And we can't beat around the bush here. We could be on the verge of the greatest season in Rangers history, and this next month will define that. And there just won't be an appetite, I don't think, for much further distraction. Now, we're in international week, nothing much is happening, so there's a lot of oxygen for this kind of thing to continue to burn on. But I think once we get through this week and into next week, the focus starts to turn to the big game at Ibrox. I think people will want to have moved on from this. So I certainly hope personally that we can get back to focusing on the football, which is what we all love to talk about, what we all love to speculate on, and what we love to get stuck into. I mean, I can already see there Alan McConnell saying, tedious, we've got a treble to win. Focus should be on that and nothing else. That sums up multiple conversations I had yesterday with Rangers fans. They just want to be absolutely laser focused on, as I say, keep repeating it, what could be the greatest season in the club's history.
Yeah, and it really is unnecessary. I guess it's unnecessary at any time, but especially heading into this month, Johnny. I totally agree, and a number of supporters go along with that as well. Let's move on then. Malcolm McLellan actually gets in touch. Morning trips. Remember, Davy Cooper, of course, a great man, sadly passed away prematurely on this day back in 1995. An absolute legend, of course, of the club. So certainly in our thoughts today, Malcolm, there's no doubt about it. Joshua, there's a couple of great pieces on the website this morning. There's one that you've done that really intrigues me and many supporters, is how Rangers' form has differed from playing on the continent to domestic action. Can you give us a little bit of insight into the findings?
Yeah, well, it was actually a discussion with Johnny that prompted my interest, so to speak. But I think it's an interesting discussion because, you know, at the weekend, Rangers got the job done, but how many times have you come away from a Rangers game on a Sunday and not just thought they look tired or the tempo isn't there, but actually thought they look like they're struggling more to create chances than they did in Europe. I think there's basic layers of explanation for that, being that there's less space to play in domestically, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Rangers have to struggle in these games. So what I've done is I've went back and kind of made the argument that the core of this team. So if you look at the Dortmund win, the 4-2 win over Dortmund, all the players were signed by Steven Gerrard, and 9 of the players were signed by 2019. So really going back to the early parts of Gerrard's tenure, the only players signed after that were Bassi and Lundstrom. If you look at what Gerrard regards as his footballing philosophy, and to do this, I've looked at his first interview with Match of the Day, where he's asked this question. The first thing he speaks about is off the ball, how he wants his team to look off the ball. He also references, the managers that have played a part in his footballing management style, I guess, namely being, I think, Benitez and Rodgers. But the argument I've kind of made is Gerrard, throughout his playing career, Liverpool had to have the off-ball platform to punch upwards because they were competing with clubs with a bigger budget. They weren't at the standing within European and domestic football as they are now, and therefore that conditions, I guess, what came first and foremost for Liverpool, and that worked perfectly for Gerrard in Europe. It's not to, in many ways, success in Europe was a more difficult achievement in the first instance. But I think what it does explain is the core of this team in the very first instance was coached to be hard to beat, and ever since, Rangers have evolved into a team that last season obviously could have that amazing defensive platform, concede 13 goals, and then add goals on top of that, add players that are better playing in condensed spaces to go and achieve an unbeaten season. The likes of Roof and Hadji, as we've discussed a lot in here recently, their goal contributions obviously aren't there this season. But I think it's as I say, the spine of this team is the one that Gerrard inherited, and the word I used was curated in his first summer at Rangers, and the mission had to be to get further in Europe, to provide the funds to build success domestically. And I think when the squad undoubtedly does refresh in the summer, you'll see an end to some of these issues, perhaps within the core starting 11. Because as we've discussed a lot recently, if you look at that starting 11 that went up to Dundee at the weekend, there's not enough goals in that team, but you'd fancy them against most teams in Europe, and that's quite a strange situation to be in.
Yeah, it certainly is. Just a spin-off from that, Rangers were fined yesterday from UEFA £4,168 for after the game against Borussia Dortmund, when fans entered the pitch, including children, at the end of the game. I know it has to stop this, Johnny, this fans encroaching the pitch, doesn't it? It's yet a lot more, not just in Scotland, but down south as well. It's costing Rangers money. It has to be nipped in the bud.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of money for a kid to run on and try and claim a top. $4,000. It's not chicken feed, and these kind of things build up. It's exuberance. There's nothing dangerous about it. There's nothing negative about it. But you just can't have it, because if you allow one or two to do it, it becomes a thing that happens every game. And of course, you have to apply the same rules if it's a kid or if it's an adult. It's just the way it works, because there needs to be consistency across the board. And we're always calling for consistency of rule breaking and things like that. But yeah, I noticed that there is a kind of growing, not movement, that would be the wrong word, but a growing sense, I think, on social media that, these kind of signs which Cammy is referring to here, please can I have your shirt, etc., etc. It was quite cute at first, but now it's getting a little bit ridiculous. Yes, I saw someone had a picture of like a WWE crowd. You know how they all have the signs up, and it was like football 2025, because that's the way it's going. Like everyone is doing it now. So yeah, I just think it needs to be nipped in the bud, and people need to be reminding their kids that they're there to see the game and they need to pay attention to that. Thank you very much. Sometimes it's dour, sometimes it's dire, but you just have to. Exactly. Stick to the watching the game, because sometimes it's also absolutely magnificent. And there was more than enough, I think, excitement in that game against Dortmund to keep everyone satisfied and interesting. Just on something else, Derek, there, this was the comment. I think this one's the comment of the day award. This one here from David Burt. I just want a bag of cans and Pedro Caixinha back.
Those were the days.
I think Pedro's off to a new job in Argentina, actually. I noticed that was coming out last night. So there you go.
Yeah, less said about that era, the better. Sticking with Europe, Joshua, a stat that the UEFA Europa League Twitter account posted yesterday that caught my eye was highlighting Connor Goldson's impressive form in Europe. Apparently, he's won the ball back 60 times in the competition, 6 times more than his closest rival, Marcel at Galatasaray. He's a top player. He's leading the charts, Joshua. He really has been a colossus for Rangers. We know that since joining. We know there's an ongoing contract situation rumbling in the background. But certainly in Europe, as this stat shows, he's Rangers' main man, isn't he?
It'll be so difficult to replace. And I think he's a player that people, until he's gone, the consistency with which he plays and the consistency with which he just starts as well. I know Van Bronckhorst has rotated him slightly more than under Gerrard. But yeah, absolutely. I think, as Cammy says, we'd love to see him sign up for the rest of his career. If he does go, it'll be a huge loss. And I think because he's had, let's say, some moments where he's not endeared the support, notably that concession against Hamilton, which was always going to be hard to come back from, the comments in the League Cup semi-final, although I think in hindsight, a lot of people probably more appreciated his honesty the kind of days after. But just a fantastic servant. I don't really understand. Sometimes I feel with Goldson, especially from people outside of Rangers, there's not the kind of, I guess, respect of how good a player he is, especially given what he's done in Europe over these last 4 years and leading the defence last year to a record-breaking defensive season. And you see him as well.
I think that's a pertinent point, Joshua. I'm quite surprised that no one's come in for Connor Goldson with money, because he's performed really well at such a high level. And unlike James Tavernier, where I can see that there's sort of flaws in his game that might put off clubs at an elite level, I think Connor Goldson's got a lot of the right stuff. He's a leader, he's a talker, he's a guy that's able to spring attacks from the back with a really, really good raking pass. He doesn't give the ball away an awful lot. He's very tidy on the ball, and he's not a slouch either. I'm not saying he's going to walk into Manchester United or Man City or Liverpool, but I'm surprised that there hasn't been more interest from lower sort of bottom 10 Premier League clubs and actually abroad, given how he's performed in the Europa League. You'd have thought that somewhere like Italy would be ideal for him. Spain, I think he would be physically really, really strong in that league. But maybe that's all to come in the summer. Maybe that's part of his plan, is to get a big move to one of these type clubs. But I think it's unfortunate that the COVID came along and that Rangers haven't been able to cash in terms of his true value. But I don't think anyone can doubt that he's provided some excellent moments on the pitch.
Especially, Johnny, those balls over the top. I think you'll see, if Goldson does go, I think people will be surprised when a replacement comes in. I doubt they'll be as good in the first instance on the ball as Goldson. And listen, Goldson has improved a lot in a lot of aspects since he joined Rangers. And I guess this has been the peak of it, or coming into the peak of his career, especially after missing so much football in the kind of few years before he came up to Scotland. But that ball over the top, the diagonals which he hits with such accuracy, and it was more seen, I guess, when Gio first came in, and now teams are a little bit more alive to it. But yeah, certainly in my opinion, he'll be really difficult to replace, and the quality that he has on the ball will be difficult to replace at that level. And you see that with the finish at the weekend, Derek, against Dundee. I mean, how many centre-backs go and loft that over the keeper in that kind of way? And he is doing that. It's not, he looks at the keeper before he sees he's coming out to move him. And Goldson scored quite a few important goals, even this season. The one at Ross County should have been the eventual winner. I think defenders as well. The one thing that probably doesn't help him is he does, when Rangers concede a goal, always have his arms aloft. Scott saying he's no leader. I mean, I disagree with that. But.
Yeah, there's a lot of negative comments coming in about Goldson, which is a surprise. Of course, he splits opinion. There's no doubt about it, Johnny. But like Joshua says, I think he's one of these players that when he does go, it's going to be one of those you don't realise how much he's missed until he's gone. Yeah,
listen, he's not Richard Goff, So everything is context,
Yeah.
He's not a world-class centre-half. I'm totally down with that. But we are where we are, and the Premiership is where it is. And I think he's been a brilliant player at that level for Rangers. Yeah, I think in his first 2 seasons in particular, he had a situation going where he could play 7 games, 8 out of 10, but then the 8th game it would be a 4 out of 10. But I really think that last season that was eradicated, and I don't think there's been that many times this season where he's had poor games. Honestly, the odd one that I can think of, but nothing where you would be like Connor Goldson has been badly exposed. I think he's been a terrific player. Honestly, I would defend him, and I do think leadership has changed. People talking about leadership, and again, I worry sometimes that we're too prone to compare to names of the past when Rangers were operating at a different financial level and where leadership in of itself was different. There's a new generation of guys now between 18 and 30 that don't respond to that kind of sort of bullying style management that was always prevalent when we were growing up. Me and you, Derek, not Joshua, obviously. And I think Connor Goldson is more in the mold of the new style leader. But I think, Josh, you've been going to a lot of these games. Derek, you've been at a lot of the games as well. I mean, you'll probably testify. I mean, certainly the games I've been at, when Connor Goldson is on that pitch, which is almost all of the time, he is the guy who is leading on the pitch. James Tavernier leads by example, but in terms of leading, in terms of the traditional sense, in terms of pointing, cajoling, telling his teammates to get a move on, that he's the guy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I've just seen a comment saying that maybe they should replace him with Porteous. I think he's a far better player than Porteous. No,
that's
just my opinion. And I do think that, again, you look at Europe, as we've discussed at the top of the show, it's different, and there's reasons why Rangers look good in Europe. But I think you see as well the performance level, that the height that players can play at in a different type of football when it is more transitional, there is more space.
Yeah.
And just as Johnny says, on the ball, so much of Rangers' build-up play is stationed around Connor Goldson for that reason. And when Van Bronckhorst came in, you've seen that increase even more, because obviously he rated him so highly on the ball. We've written, I've lost count of how many times I've written a piece and included balls from Goldson into the feet of Morelos. As we've just mentioned, his diagonals over the top. And of course there'll be weaknesses in his game, because if there wasn't weaknesses in his game, he would be playing at the highest level of football, and that's not what the Scottish Premiership is. But certainly, in my opinion, he'll be really hard to replace. I don't think Suter's a direct replacement for him. Personally, I'd like to see Doikai come in, but then again, I don't think he's as good on the ball in the first instance as Goldson. Goldson needed to develop that more when he came into Ibrox, but Doikai comes in at a different time in Rangers history, when they're not building up. They're hopefully going to be continuing from a position of strength in the summer. So yeah, in my opinion, it'll be really hard to replace, and I'm sure a player that maybe in hindsight people will realise how important he was then. And he also, I think he scored 8 goals in the league last season, Johnny, or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And this season he scored a few important goals as well. So if he does go, I think he's been a fantastic servant for Rangers. But I'd really like him to stay for a few more years, as friend of the show, Cammy, was saying above.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on, Johnny. News coming out of Zambia this morning that Fashion Sakala has tested positive for COVID-19. He's withdrawn from his international squad as a result. Worrying news. We obviously wish Fashion all the best, and hopefully he gets over this illness. Not what you want to hear, but I mean the COVID rates are rising again, and it could affect squads going forward. But you wish, Fashion, of course, he came on and I thought he made a difference on Sunday against Dundee. You just be hoping that he's back ready again for the game against Celtic. I don't imagine he'll be starting, but hopefully he's back fit as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, I think there's a good number of days now between that game and now, isn't there? 12 days-ish.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think he should be okay. Obviously, our thoughts are with Fashion, and hopefully he can overcome the illness, and hopefully it's just mild.
Yeah,
and he'll be absolutely fine to come back for the game, because he is, an unconventional, frustrating player, but he's also effective. He brings chaos. he brings pace, he brings enthusiasm, and I think he's a very handy guy to have around the squad that can come in and cause problems. And, you know, pace against Celtic, that's going to be useful. There's no doubt about that, especially down those flanks where the fullbacks are likely to be leaving quite a bit of space. So, yeah, I think it's important that Rangers get him back as quickly as possible and hopefully give an option for the game against Celtic.
Yeah,
but it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, we're going to get into this all next week, but the strategy for Celtic is going to be fascinating given what happened in the last game. But the good thing, I suppose, for Giovanni van Bronckhorst is that you know exactly how Celtic are going to play. You know, they play the same way every single time. Ange Postecoglou, he couldn't be clearer on that. Could not be clearer. So ultimately, you have plenty of opportunity to look at what they're doing and trying to work out a way of how to stop it.
Yeah, most definitely. I don't like this idea. John Dooley said he had a bad dream last night. There was a COVID-19 outbreak before the Celtic game. We had to play the B team against Enelo. I wouldn't have too many qualms about that. They had a great result on Saturday that Joshua
was quite impressed. I think he wants to become the B team correspondent going forward.
It was honestly, so many games this season I think have been a little bit, they've been enjoyable, but how many Rangers games this season have you thought, oh, late goal conceded or haven't been great away from home? The BT game was just fun, so the more of those the better for me, please.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, folks, that'll do us there. Thanks to everyone for interacting with the show as ever. It really is much appreciated. So many comments coming in. If you're not already subscribing to us on YouTube, just hit that button and you'll never miss a video when we go live. And also, if to take advantage of the Rangers Review site, just £2.99 a month to support top quality journalism covering the club you love, just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe. And the link is in the comments box as well. We'll be back again tomorrow morning, but until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.